Hey folks, are you ready for a serious topic? And I mean a really serious one, which could be quite controversial. My guest today is Professor A.D. Simmons, and she has a book out called Who is the Radical Islamist and Why? This is going to be a two-part series which will be released simultaneously. In the first part, we're going to talk about Muslim, we're going to talk about faith, we're going to talk about their culture, we're going to find out, are they all bad? And what and who is a Muslim and what differentiates a radical Muslim. And in the second part, we're going to talk about the immediate threat that Americans face today and what can be done about it and what we need to be aware of. So please sit back and join me in this podcast with Professor A.D. Simmons. I'm going to be frank and say that, as important of a topic this is, especially going on now or, all the time with uh, Muslim, Islamic religion, jihad, everything,
Right.
I am probably one of the 320 plus million in America who really don't know and understand either uh, the possible dangers nor what the difference is between or what is Islam, what is Muslim, what's the Muslim world, and what or who is jihad. So I was wondering if you could first, kind of give your credentials as to who you are and why you are a professor and such an expert on this topic, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay. Well, I've had 29 plus years working, living, and consulting and so forth within the Islamic world. I was sort of an oddball. I wanted to learn Islam and Islamic law, but not from an American point of view. I wanted to learn it from them. So I approached it with them as a student. I was eager to learn. I wasn't there to judge. I wasn't there to criticize. I was there to soak up all the knowledge I possibly could. And so I enjoyed my 29 plus years. My children became friends with them. My late husband became friends with them. And I will tell you, when my late husband died, the Arabs were just wonderful taking care of us. The embassies in Washington brought food out to us. They took us to the Kennedy Center. They took us to theaters. I mean, they were really went out. They even came to my husband's funeral. And the ambassador to the United Arab Emirates drove the car that the children and I went from the church to the gravesite. He wanted to drive us personally. So it was just once you become their friend, you're their friend. But the problem you have to realize is who you're befriending.
Okay. Um,
You know, the Islamic faith is a very strict faith. And I can tell you honestly, by studying Islam, I became stronger in my Christian faith.
oh,
Those imams really brought a lot of questions to my mind that I did not know and understand about my own faith. They start teaching their children at 4 or 5 and reciting and knowing the Quran. Um, they instill in them in their schools, the madrasas, how important it is to be a Muslim, that's one of the most important things you can be in your life, is to be a Muslim. And so that is not something that's taught in America, to take pride in who you are or your religion or your country and so forth.
mm-hmm.
Um, Also, I have lectured and consulted and worked with, let's see, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Kuwait, um, Egypt. I was in Israel a couple times, and I was in, let's see, the United Arab Emirates and Oman and Qatar. Those are the only ones I can tell you, but I was in those countries. I lived with the Bedouin ones. I rode a camel. I did it all. I had a wonderful time.
Interesting is you're telling me all this, and I think about my little sister who traveled through Europe, and she actually, um, if we want to call it, befriended the Bedouin. She camped with them. She went to their, would it, for the Bedouins and everything. Is it still called a Ummah, their community? Is that?
Uma.
Uma.
Yes.
So she was, I will say she was, I won't say unwillingly, but unknowingly really embedded into the community for a couple of months. But this was way
They
back.
will do that. It's fascinating. They just take you in like family.
Yes, yes. And you know the interesting thing that you just said is where it strengthened your faith in Christianity, in God, and you know their religion is monolithic like ours, where you believe in the one God, and there's Allah,
Right.
and ours is God. Um, but it's interesting also how they are taught young, that there is one God, and you live by that, by the rule. Is that, would
Right.
that
The
be correct?
divine law.
And we don't, or Christianity seems to have, or Western culture seem to have really kind of splintered in many different ways
Ways.
individually, as far as how I want to believe. It's like how I believe. It's not how the Christian belief is.
Right.
So sorry for interruption on that.
You did not interrupt me. That's a very good point. Because I found when I worked with them and I lived with them, we all three believe in the same God. The Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, there's only one God. But they literally practice it. From the time they are born to the time they die, there is only one God. Um, According to the Quran, you cannot worship any idols or graven images, which they do not understand why Christians, our churches are full of the crosses and pictures of Jesus. That is totally against God's will. That makes us evil because we've broken one of the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
And their Sabbath day is a Sabbath day. Our Sabbath day I can remember as a child, there were no stores open. You did not do anything on the Sabbath day but go to church and have dinner with your family. Now you go to stores, you shop, you play golf, you do whatever you want to. Where in their faith, the holy day is that. It's God's day. He told us that was His day. So, like I'm saying, I really learned a lot from them that as a Christian, I had not really been taught from a child up in Sunday school, Bible school, church, and so forth, that they stress every day that this is what is important.
Yeah. Big difference. So I'm just thinking back to the days for me, church, Bible school, Sunday school, and it was almost like a, at least for the kids, it was put onto us as a game to, I call it a game to recruit by, get as many as you can, and you can put your hand in the candy jar and get your candy, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't taken as seriously, so
Right.
hence made me grow up that way, really. Not to take the religion as seriously as maybe we
I think
should.
that's what all of us have done,
Mhm.
right. But there are moderate Muslims just like there are moderate Christians. And the radical Islamist, which I wrote my book on, Who Are the Radical Islamists, they literally follow Sharia law. You either follow Sharia law or you're not a Muslim. That is their beliefs. They're very, very strict, like Hamas, ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, Hezbollah. All of those are very strict radical Islamists. Now, we've had radical Christians.
Mhm.
Christian Identity Church is a radical church, which is called Christian Identity, and it is really a church that has the swastika up in the chapel. Do you know what I mean? It's really a church that trains people how to kill um, black people and so forth. They have their own militia group. So it's not that it's something ironic. It's just that in the Islamic faith, they take it very seriously. And the reason being is that they are warriors of Allah. According to Sharia law, they are not just warriors out there fighting and killing. They are literally doing it for God. They are warriors of Allah. And I don't know if you've heard of Qutab, Qatb. He was a famous poet, literary writer, and so book. He wrote the book called The Millstones, and that is literally like the Bible for the radical Islamist. And what he did is he divided the world only into two parts. Dar al-Islam means the land of Islam, and they follow Sharia law. The other part of the world is Dar al-Harb, and Harb means war or evil. So the world consists of evil or good. The radical Islamists are the good, and the rest of the world are evil. So therefore, it is their job to rid the world of all the evil.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I can't even say that I know anything about this, but uh, don't they have like a three phase thing before they can actually consider fighting or going to war? They first have to do their best that they can to um, prevent that violence, if we want to call it that. Uh,
That's not something I'm familiar with. I know the pilots for 9/11 were out in the red strip in Florida and with the prostitutes and drinking the night
ah,
before they did 9/11 because they knew that when they did 9/11 they were doing it for Allah, so all of their sins of the past would be forgotten.
wow. Yeah, the only
That's why they yell Allah Akbar.
okay.
They're doing it for God.
Forgot.
Allah Akbar.
The reason I asked about the three phase, three levels, I thought I'd read something about that before, but what was interesting to me is it seems like that there was, to follow so strictly, there was no um, step one and two, like do the best you can, find the best way to resolve, and if you can't, then war. But it seems like it's just straight to war often.
Right. There are three types of jihad
Okay.
because jihad is struggle against evil, the struggle between evil and good. And there's the largest jihad is the one in which man has with God himself,
Okay.
your own personal. The lesser of the jihads is what we're in right now, global jihad and fighting and war.
Okay.
And if you're a warrior for God and you're killing to get rid of the evil that's in the world, then you immediately go to heaven. God forgives you all of your sins and you go straight to heaven. Because in the Islamic faith, you stay in the ground to the second coming of Christ. Until the world comes to an end, that body stays in the ground,
Mm.
where we as Christians believe our soul will go to heaven. Nothing happens to that person till the world comes to an end. So that's why their philosophy is you either become a Muslim and follow Sharia law or you're dead. The world comes to an end. Whichever happens first is the way it's supposed to be according to Allah.
And that's where he said there's either good or there's bad or good and evil
Right.
type of situation.
There's nothing in between. And you can't negotiate with them because what can you offer them better and larger than God
Right.
has offered them?
Now,
You,
then make me understand how is it that um I will succumb to, or I will say, okay, I I believe in the Muslim faith. I am Muslim. I choose to be. How does one prove to them that I have converted?
by totally following Sharia law.
Podcast episodes 205 and 206 with Professor Anna Simmons is the opinion of the individuals and not associated with any organization or any group. Professor Simmons, we were just talking about Islamists, Muslims. We're going through everything, but one of the things that I want to know is, at least in the Western culture, there's many people that when you hear the word Muslim or you hear Islam, we think immediately evil, bad. Um, are is the Islamic religion, is it bad by nature?
Not that I found. They're very hospitable. They're very kind. In fact, when you're in their company, You are safe because if anything happened to you, it's their responsibility.
Mm.
So they would protect you. I mean, if they're going to kill you, they'll kill you after you leave them. They're not going to do it while you're with them. Does that help you any?
It does.
Give
What
you a bit of confidence? Just stay with them. Don't leave.
once you join the family, you're in. Don't
Yes.
leave. Uh, so
But I think it's because it's the propaganda that the radical Islamists have put out there, like with October the 7th. They have to show what I call propaganda by deed. They want you to see the worst part of them. They want you to remember them. For example, if you remember ISIS, when they would behead people or, take their victims, they were always dressed in total black, and their victims always wore bright orange outfits. That way, it would distinguish it in your mind, and it would stick in your mind that forever. I mean, if you mention the 12 Egyptians that were beheaded, the first thing that comes to your mind was that they were in bright orange uniforms and they were stood over by these men in totally black. It's propaganda by deed, but it's something that sticks in your mind.
mm,
And until you literally, I think, travel to their countries when you can, because a lot of the countries will not let you in, but you get to be exposed to them like your niece was and the opportunities that I have, that you understand there is a different type of Islam. And I worked with the embassies in Washington, and it was a totally different Islam, but yet they were devout Muslims, but they were polite, they were kind, they were understanding, um, they were helpful. Do you know what I mean? They were like you would expect anyone to be. They weren't aggressive, they weren't loud, they were not rude to women, they treated their women very politely, very kind. So it's a totally different part of Islam. The radical Islamists they think they're strict, and they are, but they are so strict that they have taken away the many values I found of humanism, of being a human being.
mm, okay.
And for us and for them, your relationship with God is what is important. However, they judge that relationship on their ability to rid the world of evil, where the moderate Muslims base that on their ability to understand and to work within other people and other cultures and customs. So it's I think it's the image that's been projected by ISIS, Al Qaeda, and so forth. That's what they want you to be. They want you to be afraid of them and know that they're cruel and they're evil. That's the image they want. That is what the radical Islamists want to portray.
You know,
And unfortunately, everybody believes all Muslims are that way.
yeah.
And that is not true.
And I don't think our media is doing any help to change that for the moderate Muslims either, because what
No.
they show is exactly what you're telling us that the extremists want to portray, and that's what we're showing. Um, and it definitely puts a fear in me because that is exactly what I see. Everything that
Right.
you're telling us right now is embedded in my head,
Right.
and I would have never have even thought that there's a moderate which is considerate of. I don't know if this is the right word, but considerate of others or considerate of you, and they're hospitable. I would have
Right.
never really thought that.
No, it is, and it's a shame, but that's what the radical Islamists have just taken over.
Mm.
And that is what they have portrayed to the rest of the world. But I found their culture and their customs, I enjoy them. It
Hmm.
was peaceful, it was relaxing. I got to travel with their wives and their children. I found it fascinating that they could have up to four wives, and they treat them all equal. Each one has her own house and her own servants and all, and each one, their policy in Islamic law, they can have up to four wives, but they have to treat each wife equal. So if
Okay.
you give a 10-carat diamond ring to one wife, you better have enough money to pay for the other three to have the same thing, or your life is going to be miserable.
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, the thing too that I want to point out is that the Islamic religion is like the second largest religion in the world, not just in Arabic countries, but in the world, right?
That's
It's
part of their civilization jihad, where they are infiltrating and migrating throughout the world, and they believe in having five, six, seven children. For
okay.
example, in Denmark, recently it was recorded that over 50% of the births in Denmark are Muslim.
Uh, Muslim, Arabic Muslim, or Muslim
Yes,
by? Wow.
Arabic Muslim. It's interesting that I found that the Arab Muslims do not really accept that much Muslims that are not of that faith, because that is the faith that the revelations, the language, and all was given. Muhammad was an Arab. God spoke to them in Arabic. So therefore, you do not have the proper Quran if it is not in Arabic. And it must have been published at the King Fayed Publishing Company, which is located in Mecca, or it's not the true. And the only way you can recite the Quran is to recite it in Arabic. You can never recite it in English because Arabic is the true language. Now, I
Um,
will tell you something very interesting, if I may.
yes.
I was a substitute teacher at a high school here, and I was teaching an English class. And I had a young Iranian boy, and we were reciting poetry and so forth. And one day he asked if he could recite the Quran. And I said, "Oh, it's the Quran is beautiful poetry in it." And I said, "Of course." And he stood up in front of the class and he recited it. His diction was perfect. And I asked him if he could explain to the students what he had said. He couldn't. He didn't know what he had said. That is what the Imam and his father had taught him, but he had no idea what he was chanting.
Wow.
And it was
Is that something
interesting. I found
common?
that very interesting. I did not correct him or say anything because I did not wish to insult him. He was very proud of himself, and he should have been because he gave quite a good recital on a part of the Quran. But his father and the Imam, he went to school at the Imam with the Imam twice a week, and they taught them to chant. Have you ever seen pictures of the madrasas where the young boys are chanting? They're
Hmm.
chanting in Arabic, and a lot of times they have absolutely no idea what they're saying, but they are doing the Arabic part of the Quran.
So that's relatively common then to not know what you're chanting. It's I guess what we could look at it as how I'm viewing this is you know the basic meaning of the structure,
Right,
but you don't know the words that you're saying.
right.
So, so I
So
know like
someone else is telling you what you are saying. The imams are telling them. So basically, with your radical Islamist, it's the imams who are telling them what to do and how to feel if they do not speak Arabic. Now, what you have to remember with the radical Islamist, after the war in Afghanistan with the Soviet Union, all the radical Islamists are not from one nationality. They're not all Arabs. ISIS had Canada, United States, England, Germany. So you have to realize if they call for a global jihad throughout the world, that means all of the radical Islamists, I do not care what group you're in, you have to join that war because you are required by Sharia law that if they call a global jihad, that means the world, every Muslim is required to be part of it.
and if you follow that faith strictly,
That
you
is
will
what you will
follow,
do.
which is a scary thing for the non-Muslim, I would
Right.
say.
And that's why you have the lone radicals, like the one that went into the gay bar in Florida
Mhm.
and yelled Allah Akbar. And I think they just had an incident. Where was it where someone went into a school or something in a foreign country and Thursday or something of this
Yeah,
week?
just really recent. Yeah.
He was a loner, but he was a sympathizer with Hamas and the radical Islamists. That's why they like their propaganda, because it humps up kids, and the young youth just love being, the real He-Man. In the Arab world, you have to be a real man.
Hmm.
It's and I found it interesting watching these college kids carrying a banner promoting Hamas, and in the other arm they're carrying the LBTQ. And I'm like, do you realize they throw them off of buildings and they kill them? I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, it was to me for the fact that their brain just hadn't put it all together, or they did not know.
Right. Um, they're fighting for rights on both sides, but they have no clue as to what those rights are.
Right.
It's like I said, it's just Hamas or somebody telling them this is what you're fighting for. Believe in your fight. Believe in our fight. Our my enemy or your friend is my enemy. Whatever it's
The enemy of my enemy is your friend, to get rid of that enemy. But you
there. It
have
is.
to realize you are still their enemy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a perfect example of that is the war in Afghanistan. If you remember, Assam and them came to the United States begging for money, military support, and we gave it to them. A lot of countries did: Germany, England, France. And as soon as Russia fell, what did they do? Al Qaeda turned on the United States and all the countries that had helped them, because they were still their enemies. But we were in a Cold War at that time. So they were very smart to use the United States to help get rid of Russia. But then the
Boy.
United States was still their enemy. They're very clever and very smart. A lot of people think the Arabs are not intelligent. They have been um, managers and trading for thousands of years. And
Yeah.
I found them to be very intelligent and very mind thinking. They like to look at the pros and cons of something. And as you notice, whenever there's a radical Islamist raid or terrorist attack, it is well thought out,
Yes.
well planned. It's planned for years till they have it down pack. They run trial runs on it, like the 1993 incident where the World Trade Center was a trial, which they discovered a bomb in the basement did not bring the buildings down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember that well.
And the United States thought they were going to come from the outside, and they came from the inside. So they just triggered everything off. The only thing they had a problem with is they did not realize the time zones in the United States. That's how the ones in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Florida got caught, because they were on the planes, but the hour was not the same as what it was here.
Okay. That makes
So,
sense. Uh,
but their wealth, I mean, their brains, I was just fascinated with. To sit down with an elder and to listen to them talk about their life, and what they've gone through and their trials and their ancestors and how they've reached the point they reached, it's just totally mind boggling. How many American children sit down and their grandparents tell them their great 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 grandparents' history and how they became where they are?
uh, Not for a long time. I don't think parents or grandparents
Mm-mm.
have done that. We're
It's
losing our
sad.
lineage
Yeah.
in our family history. Um, I just want people to know that our discussion today is not about one about hate and anger towards Muslims. It is more informational and for you to let all of us be aware that you know I'm going to say not all Muslims are bad.
No.
Uh, that's just as easy or simplest way I can say it. Um, and it's the propaganda from the extremists that are painting
Right.
that picture. And I add to it that we, the media, is not doing our job or helping make things or clarify that there are the moderate Muslims who are not like that. Um, so I
Unfortunately,
just,
they're promoting what will sell.
yes, yeah,
And that's the saddest part with the media.
yeah. And,
I mean, I'm
and
not downing you or anything, but if you think about it, that's when they write articles, they've got to have an article that's going to sell the paper, or the editor's not going to keep them.
right, and anything that has to do with um, opposition. I hate to use the word war, but opposition sells. And like I said,
Right.
that's part of a democratic society of you know money and sell. So, but
And a lot of people feel that women in the Arab world are treated cruelly and so
yeah,
forth. And they are by the radical countries. The Taliban is terrible to women. Iran has a horrible reputation with women because the honor of the men is based on what the women do in their culture.
oh,
That's why you have honor killings, where they will kill their daughters because whatever their daughters did comes back on the father or the men in the family, and even her brothers or her uncles or something will kill her. And what I found hard to accept was if a young girl was raped and the man was found guilty of rape and he was beheaded, the family still killed the girl
yeah,
because she had dishonored their family. But it wasn't her fault. But
right,
yet they could not marry her to anyone because she had been fouled. So that, do you know what I mean? That was their
yeah.
logic.
We can't wash
But
her clean.
right.
She's yeah.
But the ambassador to Saudi Arabia now is a female here in the United States. And our ambassador to Saudi Arabia is a female.
Uh, How is that accepted? I mean, is it something that's welcomed from our ambassador, our female ambassador?
Well, I got along with working within their culture. I never had any sly remarks, any maltreatments. I was always treated like a lady. I adhered to their things. I wore my abaya, I wore my veil. I walked behind the men 10 paces when we went somewhere because that was the culture. I did not try to force my American beliefs or feminism on them. So I was accepted. I became part of their families. I lived with their wives and with their children. Do you know what I mean? I became
Yes.
in that part of the house because the house is divided between the male part and the female part. And the female part is called the harem, but that does not mean the belly dancers. It just means female part of the house. Because I had a young friend from UAE was talking once to a group of ladies, and she told them that she missed living in the harem. You should have seen the eyes of the audience.
I could
So
just
I had
imagine.
to step in and clarify what she meant. But their eyes were like,
Oh,
it was, I felt so sorry for her because then she was very embarrassed because she didn't know why they responded like they
yeah.
did.
The reason I was wondering about the female ambassador from the states is because I would think that with being an ambassador, you would walk an even line, so to speak, where you're not following. So the communication is I'm an equal, whereas with the Islamic and Muslim world, it's not as kind as they may be
But
and
I was
respectful.
not in
It's
an
not
equal
equal.
status with them.
Right. That's what I
That's
wanted to
the
bring up.
difference. I was
Yeah.
not an ambassador or the
Hmm.
president's wife or so forth. I
Right.
was just Ann Simmons. I was just a friend visiting their culture, so I adhered to their things.
Yeah.
But
That's why I
I,
wondered how they
right.
would respect or accept a female ambassador because they are on that
She seems to
even.
get along very well.
Okay.
And the ambassador here for Saudi Arabia here in the United States, her father was His Royal Highness Prince Bandar, who was the ambassador here from Saudi Arabia, and her grandfather is the king
Okay. Okay.
of Saudi Arabia. But she's very intelligent. She's a lovely young lady, and she's doing a wonderful job.
Wow. All this is so fascinating, and it's as short of the conversation that it's been right now. It's really opened my eyes to thinking things in a different way about the Muslim culture. Uh, and I know that there's a lot of people who are going to listen, who are watching, and everything else that say, "Oh, I've got friends that are Muslim," or "I've got friends that are Muslim." They're nothing like that. But again, we may be assuming, or they may call themselves Muslim, but they may even be they're not the radical.
Right.
Um, they I don't want to put this in the wrong way, but you know how sometimes some people will say, "Well, I'm a Christian," but they don't do the Christian thing.
Right.
They just label themselves that.
Labeled themselves, right.
And I have a feeling that a lot of, people out there might say, "Oh, I have a friend that's Muslim, but they're nothing like that. They're like me." So I'm putting in there that they might just be labeling themselves that.
They've
They're not a
adjusted themselves to America. But
Yeah.
you can travel throughout America and find different people who are Americans.
Yes.
I mean, I enjoy going to visit different friends from different cultures because even their Christmas traditions or their New Year's traditions are totally different.
Mm.
Now, I'm with a group of senior citizens. We're a very intelligent group. And every New Year's, we have a New Year's party. Our friends, the Ballmans, have a New Year's party. And because we're older, we did not like staying out to 12 o'clock to watch the ball come down. So, guess what? We celebrate New Year's, all of us together, potluck supper, everybody having a good time, at 10 o'clock with a pub in the Falkland Islands because they're celebrating at 10, our 10 o'clock is 12
Wow.
o'clock there. And they think that's fantastic down there that there's a group of Americans. By 12 o'clock, we're all home and in bed.
So am I.
I mean, it sounds stupid, but it works and we have a good time. 10 o'clock, we get the champagne out and we toast them.
That's
And
actually
sometimes
wonderful.
they're on Zoom and we're watching them and they're toasting us and yelling and screaming Happy New Year's and we just join right in.
You know, I mean, this is off topic a little bit, but that is actually a very good idea for those who um, cannot or don't want to stay up that late. Is find a way to celebrate in a different time zone with somebody else, or
Right,
even go online and you can find something that's happening live in a different time zone. That's
right.
fantastic.
It's
I like
fun.
that. Yeah.
And the
Uh,
people in the Falkland Islands, there's only one pub in the Falkland Islands.
really.
Just one little pub. And we get to celebrate New Year's with them.
Oh.
I'm a bit
Uh,
of a nerd, but fun.
oh gosh. Well, I may just do that this year. Uh, But so bringing it back to the Muslim and jihad and um, Islamic culture and everything, it's what is it that Americans or Western culture can do to be more accepting of Muslims? And I ask that because also what you said is the way that the Islamic faith is really reaching out to get garner more followers. I don't know if these words are
Oh yes,
proper
that's
that I'm
part of
using.
it. That's part of Islam. They're missionaries. They have to bring in new people. Yes.
So, how is it that we can be accepting and accept Muslims or the Muslim culture when also at the same time we may fear that they're trying to recruit and bring in more followers? Am I making sense in that?
Yes, you are, and I'm sure I was a confusion for many of them who thought they were going to convert me because it didn't work. But I've had them to my homes, and
Hmm.
they enjoy celebrating things the American way. When I went to their homes, we celebrated things the Islamic way, and that sort of breaks the gap in the understanding. Um, I think they do not understand us as much as we do not understand them, to be quite honest. I found the women in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Egypt, and Jordan watched the soap operas, and that's how they thought all America was by our soap operas. I can remember they were watching Dallas and
Oh
Dynasty
my gosh.
and all of those, and I kept saying, no, 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 no. But they thought that was how all American, how women in America were. It was really fascinating.
Well, and it does not surprise me because you hear a lot of people, or at least in stories, that they come to America thinking it's all like Hollywood. You know?
Yep. They think all Americans carry guns. I know the women when they first came here, that was what I did. I worked with them on protocol and how to adjust to the American culture because it is so different than in their culture. In fact, they could not ride in a car unless their husband or a relative is with them. So if their husband dies or their husband goes on travel, she's left. She can't even go to the grocery store and get food. The wife cannot do anything because she's not allowed to be without. So I used to go and stay with them when their husbands went out of town or something for a long period of time because I could take them to the grocery store and I
Oh,
became, I could do things with them as a female that she couldn't do on her own.
okay.
I could
So,
help her take the children to the doctors, which she couldn't do because she didn't have any way to get to the doctors and she couldn't ride in a cab because
right.
the person driving the cab was not her husband or her brother or her uncle. So those are things I don't know. I just engrossed myself to trying to understand and appreciating how they were and accepting it and showing that I accepted it.
Okay.
I don't know how else to tell you. I don't really know what I did. I just did it.
I
It was
think
there to be done and I just did it.
I think what you said in the very beginning is the key to all of this is when, and we've heard this kind of term before, where when you're in their house, you follow their rules. When they're in your home, I would say you show them the rules. You
Right.
know, so don't throw when you're in their house. Don't tell them this is not how we do it. And I know that as Americans,
Oh,
Western culture,
yes. I
we
have
do that a
been
lot. This
to
is not that's not how we do it.
Oh,
I
I've
mean,
had people come to my house who are Americans and say, "Well, that's not how you set the table." And I'll say, "Well, in my house it is.
right.
This is
So,
my house. You do it in your house the way you want to do it."
so like it's, that would be the key, really, is for each one of us to understand that when you're within the presence of somebody else that might be of a different culture, or you're going to their home, you follow their rules or try to understand their rules, but don't force yours on them.
Right.
And then when they're in your house,
Allow
um,
them the opportunity to be a hostess and to be your friend.
yes, perfect way to say it. Yeah. Um, Again, this actually is really, I hate keep using that term, or just like keep on saying that it's opened my eyes, but it's making me understand more and to make me feel safer. Now, my next question would be, the current situation within the Gaza Strip and things like that for travel, whether it be today, tomorrow, in the future. Is it relatively safe for Americans to travel into, I'll just say, an Arabic country all around?
Well, a lot of them you cannot get a visa to get in.
Okay.
I mean, you can't take a Bible into any of them at all.
Ah, okay. Did not know that.
And
Um,
it's when I was in Kuala Lumpur, anybody who was from South Africa, Kuala Lumpur would not allow them to come in.
I did a trip once, and I can't remember if I was going into from like Israel to going over to Jerusalem, but they took my passport and said, "Don't show the passport because then they may not let you in or may not let you out if you're in there." And so the tour people that put this together kept our passports and just gave us a little signed paper. Um,
I do not give up my passport. I
I was
travel
worried.
with copies of my picture and that page in my passport, and that's what I will give them. But even in hotels, I do not give up. You
Okay,
know,
that's good
you're
to
going to
know.
have to find it because it's hidden on me
Eh,
anyway.
eh,
But I mean, I am not giving up my passport because so many times they use it. You have no idea who's going to take that information
Well,
and use it.
interesting that you say that too, because I remember traveling abroad in certain countries, and I won't list a couple of countries, but there's a situation going on where, um, you didn't want these people taking a picture of you. And I forewarned the travel group because, and it was really interesting where oddly families would come up and go, "Oh, American, picture with my family," and then they'd scoot some of them out. They'd take a snapshot, and it was all because they were trying to get create fake identities with your picture.
Right. Because
Um,
that's what they used to get into the United States and all with, yeah.
hmm And it was really interesting seeing that you'd see groups of these so-called families all in this park area that we're at, and they were going up to different people. American,
The
picture.
radical Islamists are great for that
Yeah, and I was like,
because they'll use it to be Jews to get into the Jewish quarters in Jerusalem or Israel or so forth, and they'll use it to come into the United States. Do you know what I mean? In
mm-hmm.
Islam, it is all right to lie if it's for the good of Allah.
Okay, anything for Allah.
Anything for Allah. It is all right to lie if it's for Allah, if you're doing good for Allah. So that's something that I learned very quickly.
Well,
That, you know,
I guess that's like you said, it's one God. You follow one, and
there's
that's
only
who
one
you.
God, and God is the leader. And the Quran and the Sunnah, which are the words of Muhammad, the Prophet, and the Hadith are his deeds. Those are the three texts that they use.
Mm.
That dictates what you are, who you are, and it dictates you from the time of birth right straight through your life.
Can you let folks know where they could go to find out more information and to pick up your book? I now forgive me, I'm not sure how many books that you have, but one of your uh, big book is Who's Radical or Who is
Who
the
is the
Radical
radical Islamist
Islamist
and
and Why?
why?
Yes.
Yes.
Um, they can
It's
definitely go
at
to Amazon.
Amazon.
Okay.
You
Amazon's
can
good for
buy it on
everything, right?
Amazon, and I'm with Quick Start Publishing is another one that has my book. They're the ones that published my book.
Okay.
But
And
no, it's sold on Amazon, and it's
okay.
also in Kindle on Amazon.
Oh, okay. Probably even better for many folks now.
Right.
But yeah, once again, the book is called "Who is the Radical Islamist and Why?" And
Yes.
the author, it's spelled out as Anna. Is it under Professor Anna
It's
D.
A.D. Simmons.
A.D. Simmons? It's okay, so it's listed as A.D. Simmons.
Yep. I just used initials for security protection.
You know, you're not kidding. Yeah. Um, even even podcasts and anything else, which is in a way it's scary because you don't know the extremists. We might be talking about equal things on all sides, but they may say it's only one side,
Right.
and now it is not equal. You are evil. I will
Right.
find you, which is frightening. Uh,
And they
it,
have communications. I mean, my manuscript that was published by Oxford University, and I lectured at Oxford University on it, I was invited there to lecture on it, was globalization and its effect on our national security. And we are in such a small world today. I mean, look how we can keep up with what's happening with Gaza and Israel and the war. You could never do that in World War One, World War Two, the
yeah.
Korean War, the Vietnam War. Do you know what I mean? We're just in a world that you can't hide anything today.
Right. And what we're doing right now, we could be across the country and we're in real time. And I just did a earlier podcast and the gentleman was in Germany, but we're talking in real time. We're seeing each other.
Right.
Like I said, right now it's difficult to hide from anything and anyone from anywhere.
For anyone. Right.
So, but I'm just going to put this out there. We are not picking sides right now. We're just stating
No.
facts
I
and
hope I'm not. I hope I help you understand. I mean, I did a lot of research on the radical Islamists because there is such a difference. And
Mhm.
because of their radicalization, and I really started studying their propaganda, and that's what led me into getting into more of it because I believe they do propaganda by deed. That's why they do what they do so that it sticks in your mind forever. And those images, I mean, Think of the images that we have of ISIS and the beheading
Oh,
of people. Those are things that stick in your mind.
yeah. They're very good mental. What do we want to say?
That's the 21st century battlefield that I talk about in my book. It's mind. They play on your mind.
Yeah. And that can be the weakest. The mind can be the weakest, and it can be the strongest thing about
Right.
you. And there are a
Well,
lot of.
that's exactly what Hitler did. That's
Hmm.
how Hitler was able to do what he was able to do.
Yeah.
He
And I
turned the
don't want to.
children even against their own parents. And
Well, right.
I
I don't
mean,
want to say that a lot of us have weak minds, but it is true. And I'm not saying that anybody out there has a weak mind, but you always, I think, need to question things. At least,
easily influenced. I
uh,
will tell
but
you what the Muslims always told me, that Americans are naive. It's
okay.
exactly, they said all Americans are naive and gullible. That was the other word, which they had a lot of trouble trying to pronounce. Took me a while to figure out what they were saying. I didn't mean to laugh, but it's true. They couldn't get the gullible out.
Yeah. I can hear it in my head how they're trying to say
Yeah, and I
gullible.
couldn't say to them, "What did you say?" because that's rude. So I had
But it is so true that we as Americans are very gullible. We're naive. We watch or hear or see things and we believe it. A lot of us
Mhm.
don't question it. And, that's how the danger of all this internet and everything else is. It, the wrong information can spread like wildfire.
It's a
Uh,
perfect example of that, Chuck, with our riots and all we're having with our colleges.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a perfect example of being naive and taking for being the absolute truth what they're hearing and they're not hearing or they're not listening.
Yeah. Yep. Um, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is not true.
True,
If you
right.
doubt something, you know, don't believe in it 100% until you do your research and find out,
There's a
especially if it's
reason why there's a doubt there, right?
exactly. Yeah. And it even goes for the what we used to say, my gut feeling. If there's
Hmm.
any gut feeling, if there's any doubt, question it. Whether you question it to the person directly or you seek out the information on your own as a sidebar and come to your conclusion on it. Ask
I use
questions.
gut feeling a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I have with all my work.
There's it saves us a lot of times, and there's a lot of times I think people do something and they go, I knew I shouldn't have done that, my gut told me not to, or the opposite, I knew I should have done that, my gut was telling me I should have done that, but I
But you
didn't.
didn't, right?
Yeah. Well, AD Simmons, I'll save you there. AD Simmons, thank you. This has been wonderful. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to throw out there, let us be aware of as far as the radical Islam, the non-radical, um, you know, the Muslim Islamic faith, or anything like that. What?
I think a lot of Americans do not understand what a civilization jihad is.
Okay.
And a civilization jihad is, for them, is migration and infiltrating into your government, your culture, your schools, and everything. And that's exactly what the radical Islamists have done. If you look at our college campuses and you look at other things in America, they have really just look at our Congress now. I mean, if you look at it, the radicals have really just done exactly what they call civilization jihad. And part of their thing is in civilization jihad is that it's to destroy America from within. That's their
Mm,
goal. And they're doing quite well with it.
yeah, and
And it's
it's
scary that we are so naive, we're not accepting what is happening around us.
I. All right, so we opened up another little can, a tiny one here, but it seems like it's gotten progressively worse over the years. Also, it seems like it's going in a parallel or a linear plane with um I don't want to be I don't want to sound bad, so I'm just going to say it's kind of like where we're now in that culture in America where we're accepting everybody and we have to be kind to everybody. Do you know what I'm getting at? Where it's like I'm going to edit this part out. Okay, what I'm going to say it's because
Now you got me puzzled. This is where I
well,
really have to listen.
it's like the woke where we are saying, "Oh, everybody needs a fair chance," or "That's not fair. We have to do this." It almost seems like that. Where now, if we say, "Oh, there's a you're not treating them right. You're not accepting them because of their color of their skin or because the slant of their eyes. We need to accept them and let them in." But perhaps maybe we're doing letting things slide too easily and accepting because now we're being naive about things. Is that
Yes, partially. I think one of the things I have found is in America we've sort of divided our world since the last election into the oppressor and the oppressed,
mm-hmm,
which I've never really understood why we've done that, but it's happened, and you see that on our college campuses. Like them chanting that Israel is an occupier of the land of the Muslims. But most of those kids, when you talk to them, had no idea that on the UN in 1948, Israel was made a nation and accepted by the UN, and the first country that accepted them was the United States, and the second one was Russia. They're not occupiers of that land. The land is theirs.
yeah,
But in Islam, any land that was once under Islam, they have a right to take back.
always Islam
Always.
is
Always has to be under Islam. And if you look at that part of the world, Chuck, and you look at the Ottoman Empire, look at all the territory the Ottoman Empire controlled. The Ottoman Empire was Muslim.
wow.
Islam is the largest and the probably the largest and the oldest running empire in the world because it started in 632 with the Prophet of Muhammad. If you look at the Ottoman Empire, it was Islamic. The sultans were the caliphs for Islam. And it wasn't until 1922, with the end of World War I and the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, that that part of the world was no longer Islam.
Again, this is really fascinating, and now that you bring up the Ottoman Empire and things like that, um, people could go back and watch these different movies, and they'll see the Ottoman Empire that ruled that the known world really, and they
Right.
were a huge empire. So they did have influence, and like I said, they lost it in what'd you say, the 20s,
1922. The
1922.
war was over in 1918, but with the end of the Versailles Treaty, then it was 1922. And do you realize in World War One, they were almost all empires that fought? You had the Russian Empire, and it had to get out of World War One because it was going through its revolution. So you lost the Russian Empire, you lost the Ottoman Empire, you lost the German Austrian Empire. The only empires that stayed intact was France and England.
Wow.
So the
Stratego.
whole world changed after World War One. And with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was done between France and England, and they sat down and drew in the sand how they were going to divide up that Levant, that part of the world. It was all done. They never considered the tribes, the people. They just sat and divided it up. And Lebanon was to be for Christians, and Syria was to be for Muslims. That's how they divided that up. And Jordan and Iraq did not exist. They
Oh,
were countries that were formed by the British and the French.
okay.
That
It's
was all just Palestine, all roamed Palestine. And the word Palestine came from the Romans. It was Philistine,
Philistine.
and it became Palestine. But they called the area Philistine. But what a
There's
lot of people do not realize, when the Jews started coming in, it was the Palestinians who were in Turkey who was giving the land to them. They were buying it from them so that they could have their land to do their kibbutz on. It was the Palestinians, their leaders were selling it to the Jews. So it's
um
such a mess, and when you think about it, but it's fascinating.
it it
I mean,
it
it's
is.
just, I mean, your little mind, well, my little mind just goes bonkers with it. I love it.
It's making me think I want to go and read more about all of this because it is so fascinating. It's especially well, it's not in recent history. Well, I guess the 20s would be. The empire was large, but the
Right,
empire is gone. But new empires trying to infiltrate and build up. Um, but the times have changed so much. But as you said, with our politics in our country in America, um, it has caused the divide. But the divide is so from one end to the next. It's so wide that even the down the middle is a huge middle, and it's almost. I don't like saying this, but there's almost no right to anything. It's so gray of an area.
and everyone is so judgmental of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, it's terrible anymore. But if you think about it, think of Rome, what a powerful country and nation Rome was. But once Rome became divided, it fell apart.
Yep. Yeah. What is that saying? Divided we failed, or uh,
Together we stand,
united we
divided we
conquer.
fall. Is that what you're,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. United we conquer, divided we fall.
Fall,
Those kind
right,
of things. Yeah. Yeah. Which is so true. And not getting into our politics, but we are on that division, and we could stand to fall, and I think a lot of people are thinking that's
right.
what's happening
We're
here.
getting very close to it.
Mm-hmm.
In one of my classes that I'm teaching, I asked the students if the world was coming to the point that it was at with Noah when God threw up his hands and said, "This is enough," and did the flood. And they'll go, "Oh my gosh, we can't be there." I said, "Think about how much turmoil, the moral aspects, the values, all of the things that the Bible tells us God had had enough of.
Mm-hmm.
He decided this is it."
Yeah, morally, right now we are in not a very good place.
And that's why the Muslims do not understand us.
Yeah. Oh,
Morals are very high in the Islamic Sharia law and so forth. They're very strict on what women and what men and so forth can do and can't do, and how they have to act, and what is morally correct between the two sexes and so forth is very, very strict in Islam.
there's certain things, I guess, about different cultures throughout the world that um, sound good and then also sound bad at the same time.
Right.
But we just don't understand in other cultures. So,
Well, they have trouble understanding democracy. They've never had democracy. They've always been under some form of leadership, some type of dictatorship that told them what they had to do and how to do it. If you remember, when we took over Iraq after Desert Storm and they tried to have an election, they had no idea how to have an election. They didn't even have lawyers to try Saddam Hussein. Remember, the British and the Germans and the French had to go in with lawyers to train their lawyers on how to be a lawyer because they didn't know how to do a trial. And
it's
I can remember many Americans laughed over that, and I thought they've never had the need to do that. They've always been under dictatorship for thousands and thousands of years. They do not know how to take over for their own lives and that they have a choice to vote. It's the
yeah.
same in Gaza. Those people were perfectly content with Hamas controlling and leading them. That's what they've always had their whole life.
It's again now I start thinking I'm going down these different rabbit holes of thinking. Sometimes when people talk about utopia, where everything is perfect and everything like that, well, this could be that same situation where if you have that utopia and that it falls, well, you had no need to have police or enforcement or
Right.
government of any sort because um, you had something in place where you followed everything that they said.
Well,
Um,
Sharia law is very strict.
and that would be
If you're
their
caught stealing, you lose your right hand.
sometimes honestly I think we need to be a little bit more strict on
Right.
certain things here in America, for deterrent.
They do not have the murder that we have. There's a lot of crimes that we have. I know when I've been in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and all, I felt perfectly safe
Hmm,
because I was a female in an abaya and veil to begin with, so I was totally protected. And if any man came up to approach me, then he would be in trouble because he's approaching somebody who's not his family.
that's really interesting and enlightening that you say that, because I
Because I used to go out sometimes and put my sneakers on and walk 2 o'clock in the morning if I couldn't sleep.
see.
1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I felt perfectly safe. I couldn't do that in the United States.
No, no.
I'd be
You
terrified to go out of my house at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And like I said, that's why it's so interesting that you point that out, because the propaganda and what we've seen before, or not before, that we see now, we put that on all Muslims and all Arabic countries, and we
Right,
think danger. You don't dare go out by yourself. You don't walk around. If you're a woman, you don't do anything. But if you follow their laws, their
right.
rules, you are safe.
Well, under the Taliban and under the radical Islamists, they are very strict with women. But it's
Mm.
not like that everywhere, just
Oh,
like it's not like that everywhere in the United States.
yeah, I guess I should make that clarification. So, yeah, if you're under the Taliban or any of the radicals, that's a different situation, different
Right,
scenario. So, we said about the picking the sides kind of thing. You're not a side picker. You're saying here are the facts, here's the information, and
right.
here's what you need to be aware of, and you need to be cautious of. So that I respect very very much,
Thank you. I'm an R&D person.
and I
I
like
love research and development. Yeah.
I like it.
I've always been a nerd my whole life. It's okay. I've survived and I've enjoyed myself. I'm not upset with myself, and I don't feel I've missed anything in life. I've probably experienced more things in life because I am the way I am than a lot of people have because they're judgmental and they see things the way they want them to be, or they want everything to be like America.